Hi, I guess many of you are familiar with the fact that React has a component called strict mode. It was removed in literally all of my work projects before I even joined the company, so I didn't have a chance to understand why strict mode was created at all. And during working on a pet project, it turned out that I actually had a bug with strict mode enabled, so I dived deeply into what strict mode actually is, and I'm going to share it with you. Let's start with the useful and boring part. Strict mode throws warnings to the console if your project uses deprecated APIs. For example, find DOM node, which searches the browser DOM node, or lifecycle callbacks prefixed with unsafe, such as unsafe component, will mount, and others. There is also the deprecated context API, which I guess everyone has forgotten about by now. Another deprecated approach is working with refs, when we used to pass a string to a ref. I think many people no longer remember how it used to be, but you don't need to remember it. Useless knowledge now. Reminder of an outdated API is a boring but certainly useful thing. React team members went even further and decided that in strict mode, your project will be rendered completely differently, a bit crazier than we are used to. To explain it, let's have a quiz. So we have a certain component, which has a console log right in the render function, another console log inside useEffect, and the last console log we do in the cleanup method of useEffect. Let's now analyze the situation with strict mode turned off. And here is the question. Which console logs will we see in the console when the application is first launched? I'll give you 3 seconds to think. 3, 2, 1. And the correct answer. We will see render firstly in the console, and then useEffect. We will never see the third console log because we didn't have the page unmounted. I think the task was easy and everyone managed. Let's now make it more complicated and add strict mode. The condition is the same, but only strict mode is enabled. What console logs will we see now? Giving 3 seconds to think. 3, 2, 1. And the correct answer, I guess, will surprise many of you. Firstly, we see 2 render logs. The next one is the useEffect log. After it, you can see useEffect cleanup and useEffect log one more time. Agree, it's a bit of a crazy order of logs. Write in the comments, you were able to answer correctly or not. I definitely wouldn't have managed. The first time I personally heard such an answer, it just shocked me. What nonsense was spinning in my head. But of course, there was an explanation for all this, and it consists of several parts. The first and most important thing is the disclaimer. Such insane behavior is created only in dev mode, i.e., in production mode. You will have 2 console logs, like in the first quiz. This insane behavior is implemented to assist you make fewer mistakes during development. What exact mistakes are being talked about? Let's start with a double render. Why does it run twice before useEffect is executed? The idea is actually very simple and described in the documentation. React assumes that every component you write is a pure function. How can a component not be a pure function? The documentation shows an example with mutating props. Doing a push in the body of a function is considered a bad idea by the React team, and I totally agree with that. And so that you do not even raise your hands to do this, strict mode very strongly highlights this problem. Even simple cloning of the desired object will completely fix the problem. It will even be possible to push calmly, and everything will work fine, even with strict mode. What else I would like to highlight here is that it's not just 2 ordinary renders, but I would describe them as equivalent renders. To understand this, let's consider another example. Now console logs have increased. 1 still in the render, 1 in use state, and another 1 in use memo. The question is, what will we see in the console view? As you can see, there are a lot of logs, but they all divide nicely into 2 repeating groups. It is important to note that it seems that there are no dependencies in useMemo, and useState calls the function only once in the entire life cycle of the component. Looking at the result, useState and useMemo are called twice. This is what I was talking about. Renders are equivalent. That is, it renders twice as if it were the first mount of the component. To confirm the equivalence theory, let's try pressing the button and triggering a component update. The result will be as follows. Only 2 renders were added to the end of the list. No more useMemo and useState. This is logical and confirms the theory of equivalent renders. In the end, why do we need to have 2 equivalent renders with double calls to useState and useMemo? The idea is that the React team also wants to avoid side effects inside hooks. Therefore, they did not make an exception for re-rendering. If you think about it, this sounds reasonable, as not only the render function should work correctly, Use effect. I moved to a separate section. There is a reason for that. Let's add another use effect to the previous example. Everything remained the same. Only 2 new console logs were added inside use effect. I wonder what the result will be in the console. And as you can see, first the 2 equivalent calls still work as before, and only then does the first use effect start working. It's cleanup, and immediately the use effect is called for the second time. Why isn't use effect called at the end of the first block? The idea is that use effect is called at a different phase of the React algorithm. Therefore, use effect has its own atmosphere. But it is also called, immediately cleared, and called again. And of course, this strange behavior is aimed at helping us write better code. Let's imagine that we need to write code that subscribes to the page resize event. As you can see here, we subscribe to the resize event, but we don't unsubscribe anywhere in case the component unmounts, and maybe we wouldn't notice this problem for a while. This is where strict mode comes in handy. It tries to highlight this problem to us by making a double call to use effect. To fix the problem, all we need to do here is to add a cleanup function and unsubscribe from the resize event there. As a result, the code will work perfectly, both with strict mode and without it. Okay, with such a simple case, everything is clear, but what really raises questions is if we send HTTP requests to useEffect, they are sent twice. How can this DDoS attack help make our code better? When I tried to search Google for a solution to this problem, I came across an issue that was created in the React repository with the same question, and below I read Dan Abramov's answer. Usually you'd want to have some kind of cleanup for your effect. It should either cancel your fetch or make sure you ignore its result by setting a variable inside your effect. Once you do this, there should be no actual difference in behavior. If you cancel your fetch and effect cleanup, only one request will complete in development. However, it also doesn't matter if another request fires. It's being ignored anyway, and the stress testing only happens in development. In general, we recommend to fetch data with some sort of a backing cache, so that requests between multiple components can be reused, deduplicated, cached. If you use a solution like this, then you won't see a second request either. Indeed, we can easily ignore the response we don't need with a construct like this. It's only a couple of lines of work, but it's required in all the places where we make a query, which seems a bit stressful already. But it would seem that we don't need this piece of code with ignoring the response at all, but we have empty dependencies and the request will never be duplicated. And as a result, we write the code only so that strict mode does not break this component for us. Is this really the case? Let's imagine a situation where you go to a page where a request is immediately sent and immediately leave this page and immediately go to another page with a high probability of what will happen. The component has already been unmounted, but the response to the HTTP request is still returned. And if there is no trick to ignore the response, when the response returns, it will try to save the response to the state of the component that has already been unmounted, and you'll end up with an error like this. As you can see, despite the empty dependencies of useEffect, there are cases where we still need to ignore the response from the server, and strict mode is trying to remind us of this, and not just to stress you out with some weird behavior with double requests. I guess this double request feature really pushes developers away from strict mode, but I'm honestly wondering if maybe it's really worth trying to add it to our working project and see how it goes. I don't think our project is ready for this, but it sounds like an interesting challenge. I hope you liked the episode, and you don't forget to press the like button. It helps in promoting the channel. Thank you for that. Bye.